The woman banging on my door at 6 a.m. wasn't selling Girl Scout cookies. She was holding a phone with 911 already dialed, screaming that my wife was a criminal trespasser for moving into our own house. I'm standing there in my bathrobe, coffee mug steaming in the cold morning air, staring at this red-faced lunatic who's literally shaking with rage because my wife had the audacity to park her Honda in our driveway overnight. This HOA president, let's call her Brenda, is demanding that police arrest Elena for the crime of living where she belongs, her shrill voice echoing off the frost-covered sidewalk while neighbors peek through their curtains at the morning chaos. But here's the thing about neighborhood bullies. They always pick the wrong target eventually, because 20 minutes after Brenda made that 911 call, she'd be holding very different papers with her name on them. Eviction papers. What would you do if your HOA president tried to evict your wife from your own property? Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether your neighborhood has one of these people. Let me back up and tell you how we got to this insane moment. My name's Marcus. I'm 45. Work as an industrial maintenance supervisor, the kind of guy who pays his bills early, keeps his lawn pristine, and minds his own business. 3 years ago, I bought this house in Willowbrook Commons for $295K, a decent middle-class neighborhood with an HOA that charges $180 monthly for landscaping and pool maintenance. Nothing fancy, but clean and quiet. 6 months ago, I married Elena, a 38-year-old pediatric ICU nurse who saves kids' lives for a living. This weekend was her official move-in day. Saturday morning, she's unloading boxes from her Honda Civic when trouble arrives wearing a pantsuit and carrying a clipboard. Meet Brenda Kensington, 58 years old, HOA president for 4 years running, and the kind of person who measures grass heights with an actual ruler. She retired from the county assessor's office with too much time and too little purpose, living in the biggest corner house with flower beds so perfect they look fake. Within 20 minutes of Elena parking in our driveway, Brenda's marching over like she's responding to a 5-alarm fire. "Excuse me," Brenda announces, pen poised like a weapon, "but we have overnight parking violations here." She's glaring at Elena's Honda like it's a crack den on wheels. Multiple vehicles per household requires board approval, and that commercial equipment violates our residential-only bylaws. Commercial equipment? It's Elena's medical bag, stethoscope and blood pressure cuff visible through the rear window, the tools she uses to keep children breathing at the hospital. But Brenda's already scribbling a $150 fine, her manicured nails clicking against the clipboard like tiny hammers. I step outside with our marriage certificate and property deed, both clearly showing Elena's name alongside mine. "She's my wife, Brenda. She lives here now." The morning air carries the scent of fresh mulch from Brenda's obsessively maintained garden beds as I try to keep my voice level. Brenda barely glances at the documents. "Doesn't matter. Rules are rules." She slaps the fine on Elena's windshield with the satisfaction of someone who's just conquered a small country. Some people think rules don't apply to them. That's when I notice Elena's face, hurt, confused, like she's been slapped. This woman is treating my wife like a criminal for the crime of existing in her own home. Elena's holding a box of nursing textbooks, still wearing her hospital ID badge from yesterday's shift saving premature babies, and this clipboard-wielding tyrant is making her feel unwelcome in her own driveway. But Brenda's not done. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with county code enforcement about this boarding house situation," she announces, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "And I'm very concerned about all this suspicious medical equipment." She says medical equipment, like Elena's running a meth lab instead of carrying the tools that literally restart children's hearts. The sound of Brenda's heels clicking against concrete echoes through the morning silence as she marches back to her fortress, leaving Elena standing there holding her box, looking like she wants to disappear. 3 neighbors are watching from their windows, curtains quickly snapping shut when I look their way. That evening, Elena sits at our kitchen table, still wearing her scrubs after a 12-hour shift in pediatric ICU. "Maybe we should just pay the fine," she says quietly, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "I don't want to cause problems. This incredible woman who fights death every day to save other people's children is worried about causing problems because some power-drunk retiree decided she doesn't belong here." I reach across the table and take her hand. Her fingers still smell faintly of hospital antiseptic, the scent of someone who spends her days healing the world. "We're not paying that fine," I tell her. "And we're definitely not letting her run us out of our own home." That night, lying in bed listening to the distant hum of traffic, I made a decision. Brenda Kensington had just picked a fight with the wrong family. 3 days later, I'm drinking my morning coffee when there's a knock at the door. Not Brenda this time. It's a guy in a county uniform holding an official clipboard, the metal edge glinting in the morning sunlight. "Code enforcement," he says, looking embarrassed. "Got a complaint about illegal boarding house operations at this address." I invite him in, show him around our perfectly normal home. 2 bedrooms, 1 couple, 0 boarders. He takes notes, asks a few questions, then shakes his head. "Someone filed a complaint claiming you're running an unlicensed medical facility." He glances at Elena's small work bag by the door, the familiar scent of hospital antiseptic still clinging to the leather. "That's your wife's nursing equipment, right?" When I nod, he sighs. "Whoever called this in wasted everyone's time. You folks have a nice day." But Brenda's just getting started. That afternoon, Elena comes home from her shift looking like someone punched her in the gut. "Someone called the hospital," she tells me, her voice barely above a whisper. "They claimed I was using hospital equipment for unauthorized purposes and questioned my professional conduct." The hospital administration laughed it off. Elena's one of their best nurses. But the fact that someone tried to sabotage her career makes my hands shake with rage. Then the anonymous notes start appearing. Tuesday morning, there's a folded paper under our windshield wiper. "Keep our neighborhood family friendly." Wednesday, another one tucked in our mailbox. "Some people don't belong here." The messages are printed in block letters like a ransom note, but I recognize the expensive cream-colored stationery from Brenda's formal HOA communications. Thursday brings the final straw. Elena walks out to her car and stops dead in her tracks. Someone's keyed a long scratch down the passenger side, the metal gleaming raw through the blue paint like an angry scar. She stands there staring at the damage, her shoulders sagging with defeat, and something inside me snaps like a dry twig. That evening, I do what I should have done from the beginning. I actually read our HOA bylaws. All 47 pages of mind-numbing legalese, sitting at my kitchen table with a highlighter and growing anger. My dad always told me, "Son, when someone's playing games with rules, learn the rules better than they do." Turns out Dad was right, because Brenda's been playing fast and loose with those very same rules. First violation, her fence. The bylaws clearly state maximum height of 6 feet. Brenda's backyard fence measures 6 feet 8 inches. I check with a tape measure like she taught me, the cold metal reminding me of her clipboard clicking. Second violation, that gorgeous deck addition she's so proud of. No permit on file with the HOA, and improvements over $5,000 require board approval. Her deck cost at least $15,000 based on the composite materials I can see. But here's the beautiful part. Something I remembered from a property law class I took years ago when I was thinking about real estate. HOA enforcement must be consistent and equitable. You can't selectively enforce rules against some people while ignoring violations by others. It's right there in black and white, probably written by some lawyer who knew exactly how petty tyrants operate. The same rules that protect them can protect you if you know how to use them. Friday morning, I file formal complaints against Brenda with the HOA board. I include photos of her fence violation, documentation of her unpermitted deck, and a detailed timeline of her harassment campaign against Elena. I also cite the consistent enforcement clause and request an emergency board meeting to address these serious violations. Monday evening, the emergency board meeting convenes in the community center. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like angry wasps as Brenda shows up with her 3 supporters, expecting to railroad through some motion against us. Instead, she walks into a room where I'm sitting calmly with a folder full of evidence and a smile that probably looks a little too confident. "Before we discuss any alleged violations involving my family," I announce when the meeting opens, "I'd like to address some actual violations that need immediate attention." I slide copies of my documentation across the table to each board member, the papers making a satisfying whisper against the fake wood surface. As you can see, we have some serious consistency issues with enforcement in this community. Brenda's face goes through several interesting color changes as the board members review the photos of her fence and deck. "This is ridiculous," she sputters. "Marcus is just trying to deflect from his own violations by making frivolous complaints." "Are you saying the tape measure is lying?" I ask, keeping my voice level. "Or that the county building permits office is wrong about your deck addition?" The room fills with the uncomfortable silence of people realizing their HOA president has been caught red-handed. The other board members, decent people who just wanted to keep the neighborhood nice, start asking Brenda some very pointed questions about when she was planning to address her own violations. Brenda's face is now the color of a ripe tomato as she realizes her power play has backfired spectacularly. "This meeting is over," she declares, grabbing her papers and marching toward the door. "I don't have to listen to this harassment." "Actually," I call after her, "according to the bylaws, meetings can only be adjourned by majority vote." She stops in the doorway, her whole body rigid with fury, then storms out into the parking lot where I can hear her car door slam hard enough to rattle windows. If I thought embarrassing Brenda at the board meeting would make her back down, I seriously underestimated the fury of a woman who just lost face in front of her neighbors. The next morning, I'm heading to work when I notice an unfamiliar car parked across the street. A guy in a cheap suit sitting behind the wheel with a camera, the morning sunlight reflecting off his telephoto lens like a predator's eye. Elena calls me at lunch, her voice tight with anxiety. "There's someone taking pictures of our house," she whispers. "I saw him through the bedroom window when I got home from my shift." The coffee in my mouth suddenly tastes bitter as I realize Brenda hired a private investigator to research us, probably hoping to find some dark secret that would justify her harassment campaign. The irony is delicious. She's paying someone to prove we're the criminals while she's the one breaking HOA rules. But Brenda's arsenal is just getting started. Wednesday afternoon, Elena's supervisor at the hospital calls her into the office, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like angry wasps. Someone filed a formal complaint claiming Elena was mentally unstable and involved in neighborhood disputes that affect her professional judgment. The supervisor, a no-nonsense woman who's worked with Elena for 3 years, actually laughed. "Whoever called this in clearly doesn't know you," she told Elena, "but I have to document it for HR purposes." The smell of Elena's stress relief lavender lotion fills our bedroom that night as she sits on the edge of the bed, shoulders hunched with exhaustion. "Maybe we should just move," she says quietly, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of traffic. "I can't handle someone trying to destroy my career over parking spaces." That's when I realize Brenda's strategy isn't just harassment, it's total warfare designed to drive us out of the neighborhood entirely. Thursday brings a visit from the city planning office. Another anonymous complaint. This time claiming we're violating residential zoning laws by operating a medical practice from our home. The inspector, a patient man who's clearly dealt with this nonsense before, takes one look at Elena's work bag and shakes his head. "Ma'am, unless you're performing surgery in your living room, carrying medical equipment home from work isn't a zoning violation." That evening, I decide to fight smarter instead of harder. I call a property management attorney I found online, remembering something my father-in-law mentioned at our wedding. He'd dealt with a similar HOA nightmare years ago and learned that documentation was everything. The attorney, Sarah Martinez, specializes in HOA disputes and has that weary tone of someone who's seen this movie before. "Here's something most people don't realize," she tells me, her voice crackling through my phone speaker as I pace our kitchen. "When HOA enforcement becomes selective and harassing, it creates legal liability for the association. I had a case last year where hostile environment harassment laws applied to housing situations. Same principle as workplace protection." She suggests I start documenting every interaction with timestamps and witnesses, advice that echoes what Elena learned during her nursing training about protecting yourself with proper records. But then she drops the real bomb. "You might want to request copies of all HOA financial records for the past 3 years. They're member property. Brenda can't legally deny access, and in my experience, people who abuse power often have something to hide in the books. My construction foreman always said, when someone won't let you look under the hood, that's when you know the engine's blown." Friday morning, I submit a formal records request to the HOA board, asking for 3 years of budgets, expenditures, and vendor contracts. It's a routine request that any member can make, but when Brenda gets the email, she calls an emergency meeting to discuss protecting sensitive HOA information from harassment. The attempted cover-up tells me everything I need to know. Brenda's sudden concern about privacy when it comes to public records smells fishier than a week-old salmon. Meanwhile, the private investigator continues his surveillance, though he's getting sloppy about hiding. Tuesday, he follows Elena to the grocery store, his engine idling loudly in the parking lot. Wednesday, he's parked outside the hospital when she gets off her shift, cigarette smoke drifting from his cracked window. By Thursday, Elena's had enough. She walks straight up to his car, knocks on the window, and asks if he'd like her autograph since he seems so interested in photographing her. The guy's face turns red as a stop sign as he drives away, probably realizing that stalking a pediatric nurse doesn't exactly scream criminal mastermind. The neighborhood watch meetings Brenda organizes draw exactly 4 people, including herself. Tom Martinez, my next-door neighbor who's lived here for 15 years, shows up and later tells me the whole thing was just Brenda complaining about you folks for an hour. Tom's a retired accountant with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She spent more time talking about your wife's car than actual neighborhood security, he says, the disgust clear in his voice. But here's where Brenda makes her biggest mistake. Friday evening, she sends an email to all residents announcing an emergency assessment of $800 per household for enhanced security measures necessitated by recent incidents. The email specifically mentions costs associated with protecting our community from disruptive elements and demands payment within 30 days or face property liens. That night, my phone starts ringing off the hook, the sound echoing through our house like a dinner bell. Neighbors who've stayed quiet through all the harassment are suddenly very interested in talking. Turns out nobody likes surprise bills, especially ones that smell like retaliation. Brenda just made this personal for everyone. Saturday morning arrives with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you want to drink coffee on the porch and watch the world wake up. Instead, I'm dealing with Brenda banging on my door at 6 a.m. like she's serving a warrant. Her phone already showing the 911 screen, finger hovering over the call button like she's about to launch a nuclear missile. "There's an illegal trespasser in this house," she shrieks, loud enough to wake half the neighborhood. The morning frost crunches under her feet as she paces our front step like a caged animal, her breath forming angry clouds in the cold air. "I'm calling the police right now unless this person leaves immediately." She's pointing at Elena, who's standing behind me in her nursing scrubs, still holding her hospital ID badge from yesterday's shift, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. I take a deep breath, tasting the cold morning air mixed with the lingering scent of Elena's coffee. "Brenda, this is my wife. She lives here. We've shown you the marriage certificate and property deed." But trying to reason with Brenda at this point is like trying to convince a tornado to change direction. She's already committed to destruction. "I don't care what fake papers you have," she snaps, her voice echoing off the frost-covered sidewalk with the sharp crack of breaking ice. "No one moves in without HOA approval, and I never approved this person." The way she says "this person" makes my blood pressure spike into dangerous territory. Elena's not just my wife, she's a pediatric nurse who saves children's lives for a living, and this woman is treating her like a common criminal. That's when Officer Rodriguez arrives, probably expecting some domestic violence call based on Brenda's hysterical 911 report. Instead, he finds 3 adults standing in a driveway having the world's most ridiculous argument. I calmly show him our marriage certificate, property deed, and Elena's driver's license with our address. The officer's expression shifts from alert to annoyed as he realizes he's been dragged into HOA nonsense on his Saturday morning. "Ma'am," Rodriguez tells Brenda, his patience wearing thin like old carpet, "this is a civil matter, not a criminal one. These people have every right to be here." But Brenda doubles down, demanding Elena be arrested for trespassing, her voice getting shriller with each word until it sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. By now, neighbors are emerging from their houses like prairie dogs, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Patterson appears on her porch in her bathrobe, shaking her head in disgust. Tom Martinez steps outside with his coffee mug, taking in the spectacle with the weary expression of someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. Even the Johnson kids stop riding their bikes to stare at the crazy lady yelling at the police officer. "No crime has been committed here," Rodriguez states firmly, his hand moving toward his radio like he's considering calling for backup against Brenda instead of us. "If you file another false report, ma'am, you could face charges yourself." The threat hangs in the morning air like smoke, but Brenda's too far gone to hear it. As the police car pulls away, I watch our neighbors' faces. Most look embarrassed for us, shooting apologetic glances before disappearing back inside. A few linger, and I catch sympathetic nods from Tom and Mrs. Patterson. But the damage is done. Brenda has now publicly humiliated Elena in front of the entire neighborhood, turning our morning into a circus with Elena as the unwilling main act. That weekend, I spend Saturday and Sunday diving deep into our HOA documents. The papers spread across our kitchen table like a crime scene investigation. Elena helps organize everything, her medical training proving useful for creating systematic documentation. The smell of fresh printer ink fills our dining room as we copy and categorize 3 years of financial records that Brenda finally had to release after the board overruled her objections. That's when we find it, buried in the mundane expense reports like a needle in a haystack. Every landscaping contract for the past 2 years went to Kensington Gardens LLC, a company that happens to share Brenda's last name and lists her husband as the registered agent. The payments total $47,000 for emergency landscaping services that our neighborhood definitely didn't receive. I remember my uncle, who worked in city contracting for 20 years, always saying over holiday dinners, "Follow the money, nephew. When someone's acting crazy about power, they're usually protecting their wallet. No competitive bidding, no board approval for contracts over $5,000, which HOA bylaws specifically require. No business license or insurance on file. Just Brenda writing checks from the community fund directly to her family business for work that either wasn't done or was massively overpriced. The math is simple. Each household has been overcharged roughly $400 per year to fund Brenda's personal landscaping company. But here's the beautiful part. Elena notices something I missed. The dates of the largest payments coincide perfectly with Brenda's most aggressive enforcement actions against other residents. Every time someone challenged her authority, mysterious emergency landscaping bills appeared within weeks. It's not just corruption, it's retaliation funding, paid for by the very people she's harassing. Sunday evening, I call Attorney Martinez back. "You're going to want to see this," I tell her, the financial documents spread before me like evidence of a crime. "And you might want to clear your calendar. This just became a lot bigger than HOA harassment." Elena squeezes my shoulder as I hang up the phone, her touch still carrying that faint scent of hospital antiseptic that means she's been saving lives while Brenda's been stealing money. "What happens now?" she asks. "Now," I tell her, "we show the neighborhood exactly who they've been paying to protect them." Monday morning, I'm sitting in Attorney Martinez's office watching her review our evidence with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining x-rays. The smell of leather-bound law books mingles with fresh coffee as she spreads the financial documents across her mahogany desk, her pen scratching notes in the margins like she's uncovering buried treasure. "This is textbook self-dealing," she says finally, leaning back in her chair with a low whistle that echoes off the wood-paneled walls. "But it's worse than I thought." She pulls out a red folder from her filing cabinet, the metal drawer sliding shut with a satisfying click. "Most board members try to hide their corruption. Brenda's been brazenly stealing from your community in broad daylight." She walks me through the legal framework, and suddenly I'm remembering my business law professor from community college 20 years ago, explaining how corporate directors have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. When HOA board members award contracts to themselves or family members without disclosure, competitive bidding, and board approval, they violate that same sacred trust. It's not just unethical, it's criminal fraud that destroys any corporate protection they might claim. "Here's what makes this case special," Martinez continues, the afternoon sunlight streaming through her office window creating shadows that dance across the evidence. "Your HOA bylaws require board approval for any expenditure over $5,000. Brenda authorized $47,000 in payments to her husband's company without a single recorded vote. That's not oversight, that's intentional theft. But the smoking gun isn't just the money, it's the vindictive pattern Elena spotted. Martinez shows me how the largest payments to Kensington Gardens LLC coincide perfectly with resident complaints against Brenda. Someone questions her authority in March? Boom, $8,000 emergency tree removal in April. A resident challenges an HOA fine in August. Suddenly there's $12,000 in urgent sprinkler repairs in September paid to guess who? She's been funding her revenge campaigns with community money, Martinez explains, her voice carrying the righteous anger of someone who's seen too many bullies abuse power. Every time someone stood up to her, she punished the entire neighborhood by stealing more from the common fund. It's like a medieval queen taxing her subjects to pay for soldiers to keep them in line. The legal implications hit like a freight train. Brenda faces potential criminal charges for theft, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The HOA's insurance won't cover intentional criminal acts, making her personally liable for every stolen penny plus interest and legal fees. But here's the delicious irony. The false police reports and harassment campaign she's been running against Elena create additional criminal exposure for witness intimidation and filing false instruments. Conservative estimate, Martinez says, her calculator clicking as she runs the numbers. She owes the community $31,000 in fraudulent payments, plus another $15,000 in interest and penalties. Add legal fees and damages for the harassment campaign, and we're looking at $50,000 minimum. Her house is worth maybe $380,000, so we can definitely collect through a property lien that could force a sale. The strategy crystallizes like ice forming on a winter window. We file formal demand letters requiring full financial restitution and Brenda's immediate resignation. If she refuses, we proceed with criminal referrals to the district attorney and civil litigation for damages. But the real knockout punch comes from presenting this evidence to the entire community at the next HOA meeting. Public accountability is your nuclear option, Martinez tells me, packing the documents into a briefcase that looks like it's seen plenty of courtroom victories. Brenda's been counting on resident apathy and ignorance to cover her tracks. Once everyone sees how much money she's personally stolen from their wallets, her kingdom collapses overnight. Walking to my car, the afternoon sun warming my face for the first time in weeks, I realize we've just flipped the entire game board. Brenda thought she was fighting some troublemaker who didn't know his place. Instead, she's been systematically creating evidence of her own crimes while attacking someone whose wife taught him that bullies only understand one language: consequences. Tuesday evening, I'm sitting at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, mapping out our battle plan like a general preparing for D-Day. The smell of Elena's homemade lasagna drifts from the oven, mixing with the sharp scent of fresh printer ink as I organize 3 years of financial evidence into neat piles, each stack representing another nail in Brenda's coffin. But I know from my years supervising maintenance crews that the best plans involve the right people in the right positions, and Brenda's about to discover she's been fighting the wrong war. First call goes to Tom Martinez, my retired accountant neighbor who's been watching this drama unfold with growing disgust. "I've been waiting for someone to take her down," he says when I explain what we found, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who's finally found a worthy puzzle to solve. "Send me those financial records. I'll create a presentation that even my 90-year-old mother could understand." Tom spent 40 years following money trails for the IRS. If anyone can make Brenda's fraud crystal clear to angry homeowners, it's him. Elena contributes her healthcare expertise, organizing our documentation with the systematic precision she uses to track patient medications in the ICU. She creates a timeline showing how Brenda's harassment escalated alongside the fraudulent payments, each incident color-coded and cross-referenced like a medical chart tracking symptom progression. "In nursing, we call this pattern recognition," she explains, highlighting dates with a yellow marker that squeaks against the paper. "Show the pattern, and the diagnosis becomes obvious to everyone." Wednesday brings our first media ally, Sarah Chen, the local reporter who's been covering municipal corruption for the Tribune. She arrives at our house with a tape recorder and the hungry expression of a bloodhound who's caught a fresh scent. "HOA corruption is exploding statewide," she tells us over coffee, her pen moving rapidly across her notepad like she's taking dictation from justice itself. Readers eat these David versus Goliath stories for breakfast, especially when there's juicy financial fraud involved. Sarah's investigation uncovers details we missed. Kensington Gardens LLC has no business license, no insurance, and no employees beyond Brenda's husband Frank, who's listed as both owner and sole contractor. The company's bank account shows deposits that perfectly match HOA payments, but virtually no business expenses, no equipment purchases, no material costs, no payroll taxes. It's a shell company designed purely to funnel community money into the Kensington family checking account, about as subtle as a neon sign advertising theft. Thursday evening brings Detective Jim Walsh to our dining room table, his off-duty presence lending the gravity of someone who's seen real criminals operate. Walsh lives 3 streets over and has watched Brenda's antics with the bemused expression of someone who knows actual threats when he sees them. "False police reports are typically misdemeanors," he explains, reviewing the timeline of Brenda's harassment campaign while the ice cubes clink in his sweet tea. "But when they're part of a systematic pattern designed to intimidate witnesses to financial crimes, that escalates everything to felony territory. Your wife's not just being harassed, she's being targeted to prevent exposure of the fraud." The technical preparation intensifies throughout the week. Attorney Martinez drafts a cease and desist order that reads like a legal death sentence, demanding Brenda stop all harassment and begin immediate financial restitution. We prepare formal complaints for the State Attorney General's office, the county prosecutor, and the State Insurance Commission that regulates HOA operations. Each document builds our case like layers of medieval armor, protecting us from any desperate legal counterattack Brenda might attempt. But the real breakthrough comes Friday when Tom Martinez calls with excitement crackling in his voice like electricity before a storm. "You need to see this," he says, arriving 20 minutes later with a laptop and the triumphant expression of someone who's just solved a murder mystery. His forensic accounting analysis reveals that Brenda's theft follows a predictable pattern. She steals the most money during months when HOA reserves are highest, timing her fraud to avoid triggering automatic audits that kick in when accounts drop below certain thresholds. "She's been gaming the system like a Vegas card counter," Tom explains, his spreadsheet showing payment cycles that coincide with seasonal assessments. Every spring when annual dues come in, boom, massive landscaping emergency. Every fall when special assessments are collected, suddenly we need urgent sprinkler repairs that cost exactly what's sitting in the bank. The sophistication suggests this isn't amateur hour. Brenda's been running a deliberate, calculated fraud operation disguised as community improvement, probably learning the loopholes during her years working for the county assessor. Elena suggests we invite every household personally rather than relying on Brenda's official meeting notices. "She'll try to sabotage attendance," Elena points out, remembering tactics from her hospital's contentious quality improvement meetings. "But if neighbors hear about this directly from us, curiosity will pack that room tighter than a Christmas morning living room." We spend Saturday afternoon going door to door, armed with copies of the most damning financial documents and Tom's simplified analysis that shows exactly how much each household has been overcharged. The response exceeds our wildest expectations. Mrs. Patterson invites us in for coffee that tastes like victory and reveals that Brenda tried to fine her $200 last year for having excessive garden decorations. 3 ceramic frogs that her grandchildren gave her for Mother's Day. The Johnsons show us a citation for their teenager's basketball hoop being inappropriately visible from the street, as if teenagers playing basketball somehow threatened property values. By Sunday evening, we've confirmed attendance from 28 of 31 households. Tom's created a PowerPoint presentation that would make corporate executives weep with envy. Sarah Chen has arranged for a photographer to document the meeting. Detective Walsh will attend in his personal capacity, but wearing his badge, a subtle reminder that criminal behavior has consequences that extend beyond HOA drama. Standing in our kitchen, surrounded by evidence, allies, and a plan more bulletproof than a bank vault, I realize we've built something bigger than revenge. We've created an army. Monday morning brings the first sign that Brenda knows the walls are closing in. Elena finds a business card tucked under our windshield wiper. Some cut-rate lawyer from 2 towns over advertising HOA defense services in faded print that looks like it was copied on a 20-year-old machine. The card smells faintly of desperation and cigarette smoke, probably slipped there by Frank Kensington in the pre-dawn darkness like some bargain basement spy thriller. But Brenda's real panic becomes obvious Tuesday when Tom Martinez calls, chuckling like someone who's just watched a clown fall into a wedding cake. "She tried to hire my old accounting firm to represent her," he says, the amusement bubbling in his voice like champagne. "Asked them to review irregularities in HOA financial oversight and prepare defenses against harassment by disgruntled residents." The partners took one look at the evidence Tom had already shared and politely declined, suggesting Brenda might want to contact a criminal defense attorney instead, preferably one who accepts payment plans. Wednesday evening, we discover vandalism that crosses every line of civilized behavior. Elena comes home from her hospital shift to find our mailbox destroyed, not just damaged, but completely obliterated with what looks like a baseball bat, metal fragments scattered across our lawn like shrapnel from an explosion. Worse, someone spray-painted "liar" across our garage door in angry red letters that drip down the white paint like accusations bleeding through fresh snow. Our security cameras capture everything with the clarity of a nature documentary filming predator behavior. The timestamp shows 2:47 a.m., and while the figure is wearing dark clothing and a hood, the gait and body shape match Brenda perfectly. More damning, the person uses our driveway to turn around, revealing a partial license plate that Elena's sharp eyes match to Brenda's silver sedan. Detective Walsh reviews the footage and shakes his head like someone watching a suspect confess on live television. "Destroying mail receptacles is a federal crime," he explains, the evening breeze carrying the scent of neighbors' barbecue as we stand in our driveway surveying the damage. Add vandalism, trespassing, and intimidation of witnesses, and she's building herself quite the rap sheet. "My sergeant always told us that criminals get stupid when they're scared. Looks like your HOA president is proving that theory." He files the report immediately, noting that the vandalism occurred just days before our scheduled community confrontation, timing that screams deliberate witness intimidation. Thursday brings psychological warfare disguised as community service. Brenda distributes flyers to every house claiming that certain residents are planning to destroy our peaceful community with false accusations and frivolous lawsuits. The flyer, printed on that same expensive cream-colored paper she uses for official HOA business, warns neighbors about troublemakers who want to eliminate all community standards and turn our neighborhood into chaos. Reading it feels like watching someone dig their own grave with a gold-plated shovel. The flyer backfires more spectacularly than a 4th of July firework in a garage. Mrs. Patterson calls it the most ridiculous thing she's read since her grandson tried to convince her that professional wrestling was real. The Johnsons taped their copy to their front window with a handwritten note saying, "We support Marcus and Elena." By Friday afternoon, more than half the neighborhood has openly rejected Brenda's propaganda, some neighbors going so far as to march their flyers directly to our door, rolling their eyes at Brenda's obvious desperation. But Brenda's not finished with her campaign of terror. Friday brings the most disgusting escalation yet. Elena's workplace gets another anonymous call, this time claiming she's been mentally compromised by neighborhood stress and should be evaluated for patient safety concerns. The caller provides specific details about Elena's schedule and suggests the hospital monitor her behavior around pediatric patients. Using children's safety as a weapon against a pediatric nurse crosses lines that decent people don't even know exist. Elena's supervisor, Dr. Rachel Morrison, calls immediately, her voice tight with the kind of anger that comes from watching someone attack excellence. "This is getting ridiculous," she says. "Someone with detailed knowledge of your personal situation is trying to destroy your career. I'm documenting this as workplace harassment and contacting hospital security." Dr. Morrison's worked with Elena for 3 years and knows her as one of the most competent, compassionate nurses in pediatric ICU. But the fact that someone would weaponize child safety concerns to attack Elena makes my hands shake with rage. Saturday morning, I discover Frank Kensington parked outside Elena's hospital, apparently photographing her license plate and documenting her work schedule like some discount private investigator. When Elena confronts him, he claims he's investigating suspicious activity and protecting the community from unstable individuals. The hospital security guards escort him off the property, but not before he makes veiled threats about consequences for people who don't know their place. The community response to Brenda's escalation campaign tells the real story. Tom Martinez starts a neighborhood group chat that quickly grows to include 26 households, all sharing their own stories of Brenda's abuse and expressing support for our upcoming presentation. Sarah Chen interviews several neighbors for her article, collecting quotes like, "It's about time someone stood up to her," and "We've been afraid to speak up for years." Sunday evening, Elena sits at our kitchen table organizing medical records. Not patient files, but documentation of her own stress-related health impacts from Brenda's harassment campaign, the papers rustling like autumn leaves in her precise hands. "I've developed chronic headaches, sleep disruption, and anxiety symptoms," she explains, her voice carrying the clinical detachment she uses to discuss difficult diagnoses. "My blood pressure's elevated, and I've lost 8 pounds from stress. This isn't just harassment, it's causing actual physical harm." As we prepare for Monday's confrontation, watching Brenda's desperation spiral into criminal behavior, one thing becomes crystal clear. Tomorrow, the neighborhood bully finally meets her match. Monday arrives with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes everything feel possible, but the community center parking lot already buzzes with tension by 6:30 p.m. Cars fill every space as neighbors arrive early, many clutching copies of Brenda's ridiculous flyer and shaking their heads in disgust. The smell of fresh coffee mingles with the scent of fallen leaves as Tom Martinez sets up his laptop, the projector screen glowing white like a blank canvas waiting for justice to paint its masterpiece. Brenda arrives fashionably late at 7:15, strutting through the parking lot like she owns the place, which, in her mind, she probably does. She's brought reinforcements. Frank slouches behind her carrying a briefcase that probably contains their discount lawyer's advice, while Dorothy Pratt and Bill Morrison trail behind, looking increasingly uncomfortable with each step. The click of Brenda's heels against the concrete echoes through the evening air like a countdown timer ticking towards 0 hour, each step bringing her closer to her own reckoning. Inside, the community center hums with the largest HOA meeting attendance in recorded history. 28 households represented, Sarah Chen positioned discreetly with her camera, Detective Walsh sitting in the back wearing his badge like a quiet promise of accountability. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like angry wasps as Brenda surveys the packed room, her confident expression flickering for just a moment when she realizes she's walking into an ambush disguised as democracy. Before we begin tonight's meeting, Brenda announces, trying to seize control of the narrative with the desperation of someone grabbing at smoke, I want to address the malicious rumors being spread by certain residents who seem determined to destroy our peaceful community. Her voice carries that familiar tone of wounded authority, but tonight it sounds more like a leaking balloon than a commanding presence. These false accusations are nothing more than harassment designed to— Point of order, Tom Martinez interrupts, standing with the calm authority of someone who's spent 40 years dismantling financial lies for the IRS. According to HOA bylaws, the first order of business must be financial reporting. I believe everyone here is very interested in reviewing our community's expenditures. The room erupts in murmurs of agreement as Tom walks to the front, carrying a folder thick enough to choke a horse and wearing the satisfied expression of an accountant who's about to balance some very crooked books. Brenda's face shifts through several interesting color changes as Tom begins his presentation, like watching a traffic light malfunction in slow motion. The projector screen fills with spreadsheets showing $47,000 in payments to Kensington Gardens LLC, each line item highlighted in angry red like evidence at a murder trial. The room falls silent except for the gentle hum of the projector and the sound of 30 people's jaws collectively hitting the floor with the force of dropped anvils. "Holy shit," whispers Jim Patterson, apparently forgetting his wife's rule about language in public. "She's been stealing from us for years." Mrs. Patterson elbows him for the profanity but nods in furious agreement, her ceramic frog-loving grandmother instincts sensing betrayal from a mile away like a bloodhound catching a familiar scent. Brenda attempts damage control with the desperation of someone trying to stop a dam with bubblegum and prayer. "This is completely out of order," she shrieks, her voice rising to frequencies that probably upset neighborhood dogs 3 blocks away. "These documents are private HOA business and Marcus has no authority to—" "Actually," Detective Walsh says, standing slowly and letting his badge catch the fluorescent light like a beacon of accountability, "when financial irregularities suggest potential criminal activity, these documents become evidence." His voice carries the quiet authority of someone who's arrested actual criminals instead of harassing pediatric nurses who save children for a living. "Ma'am, you might want to consider remaining silent until you consult with legal counsel, preferably someone who passed the bar exam." The warning hangs in the air like smoke from a fire that's already consumed everything combustible. Elena stands to address the room, her voice steady despite everything Brenda's put her through, carrying the same calm authority she uses when explaining life-or-death procedures to worried parents. "I want everyone to know what this woman has done to my family," she begins, and the room leans forward like flowers turning towards sunlight after a long winter. She describes the harassment campaign methodically, the false police reports, the attempts to destroy her medical career, the stalking at her hospital where she works to keep premature babies breathing. Each revelation lands like hammer blows against Brenda's crumbling credibility, the audience's faces shifting from shock to anger to the kind of determination that builds revolutions. "She called my hospital claiming I was mentally unstable," Elena continues, her professional composure never wavering even as her words slice through the room's silence like surgical instruments. "She tried to use children's safety as a weapon against someone whose job is literally saving children's lives." The irony hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Brenda's been terrorizing the very person who spends her days keeping their grandchildren alive. The formal votes come swiftly and decisively, like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Motion to remove Brenda as HOA president. 27 in favor, 3 opposed. Motion to demand full financial restitution. Unanimous except for Brenda's shrinking faction. Motion to ban Kensington Gardens LLC from future contracts passes with the enthusiasm of people who've just realized they've been funding their own oppression. As Brenda storms toward the exit, her heels clicking against the floor like a retreating army, Tom Martinez delivers the final blow with surgical precision. "Oh, and Brenda? The lien paperwork will be served tomorrow morning. You might want to start packing." The door slams behind her with the finality of justice served ice cold. The next morning arrives with the kind of crisp clarity that makes everything seem possible, but I'm barely halfway through my coffee when there's a familiar pounding on our front door. Through the window, I can see Brenda marching up our walkway like she's storming the beaches of Normandy, clutching a manila envelope against her chest like armor and wearing the expression of someone who's convinced they're about to deliver a knockout punch. "Marcus!" she shouts through the door, her voice carrying that familiar edge of hysteria mixed with false authority. I have legal papers that are going to end this harassment campaign once and for all. The morning sun catches the frost on our lawn as neighbors begin emerging from their houses, drawn by the commotion like spectators gathering for the world's most entertaining train wreck. I open the door with a smile that probably looks a little too confident, still holding my steaming coffee mug while Elena appears beside me, fresh from her night shift at the hospital and wearing scrubs that smell faintly of antiseptic and victory. "Good morning, Brenda," I say calmly, watching her face cycle through shades of red that would make a tomato jealous. "What brings you to our door so early?" "I'm filing an injunction to stop your defamatory harassment campaign," she announces, waving the envelope like a battle flag. "This meeting last night was nothing but a coordinated attack designed to destroy my reputation with lies and fabricated evidence." Her voice echoes off the morning air, causing Mrs. Patterson to peek out from behind her ceramic frog collection and Tom Martinez to emerge from his garage with a cup of coffee and the expression of someone settling in for quality entertainment. That's when I smile and call over my shoulder, "Honey, can you bring those papers we've been waiting to deliver?" "Yay." Elena disappears briefly, returning with a thick legal envelope that practically radiates official authority. The morning breeze carries the scent of autumn leaves and the sweet smell of justice as I take the papers from Elena's hands. "Brenda Kensington," I announce loudly enough for the growing crowd of neighbors to hear, "you're being served." I hand her the envelope with all the ceremony of presenting an award, except this particular prize comes with a $50,000 price tag and potential criminal charges. Brenda's face goes through several interesting transformations as she rips open the envelope, her hands shaking like autumn leaves in a windstorm. "What is this?" she stammers, but her voice lacks its usual commanding authority and sounds more like air leaking from a punctured tire. "Property lien for fraudulent financial transfers," Elena explains with the calm professionalism she uses when delivering difficult diagnoses to worried families, plus criminal referrals for theft, harassment, and filing false police reports. She pauses for effect, letting the words sink in like medicine designed to cure a very specific disease. "You taught us that some people think rules don't apply to them." The irony hangs in the morning air like smoke from a ceremonial fire. Brenda, who spent years terrorizing neighbors with clipboards and citations, is now holding legal papers that could cost her everything she's stolen plus interest. The hunter has officially become the hunted, and the entire neighborhood has front row seats to watch justice unfold in real time. That's when the morning gets even more interesting. Detective Walsh's patrol car pulls into our driveway, followed by Sarah Chen's Honda with press credentials visible through the windshield. Walsh steps out wearing his official uniform and the satisfied expression of someone who gets to arrest the neighborhood bully instead of responding to her false complaints for once. "Mrs. Kensington," Walsh announces, his voice carrying across the growing crowd with the authority of someone who's tired of dealing with frivolous 911 calls. "You're under arrest for filing false police reports, criminal harassment, and destruction of federal property." The handcuffs catch the morning sunlight like jewelry designed specifically for criminals as Walsh begins reading Miranda rights to a woman who spent months trying to have my wife arrested for living in her own home. Sarah Chen captures everything with her camera, the flash illuminating faces throughout our neighborhood as residents realize they're witnessing the end of Brenda's reign of terror. Tom Martinez actually starts applauding, which catches on like wildfire until half the neighborhood is clapping for justice being served with their morning coffee. "This is harassment!" Brenda shrieks as Walsh guides her toward the patrol car, but her protests echo emptily in front of witnesses who've seen 3 years of financial evidence proving exactly who the real harasser has been. "You're all gonna pay for this. I'll sue everyone for defamation and—" "Ma'am," Walsh interrupts gently, "you have the right to remain silent. I'd recommend using it." The car door closes with the satisfying finality of a book ending exactly as it should, muffling Brenda's continued protests behind government-issued steel and glass. As the patrol car drives away, carrying our former HOA president toward her date with justice, I address the crowd of neighbors who've gathered to witness this moment. "This is what happens when communities work together," I announce, Elena's hand finding mine as the morning sun warms our faces. "Bullies only win when good people stay silent." Elena steps forward, her voice carrying the same strength she uses to fight for children's lives every day. "Now let's make this neighborhood somewhere everyone truly belongs." The applause that follows sounds like freedom itself. 6 months later, I'm standing in our backyard watching Elena organize the first annual Community Accountability Day celebration. and the transformation is nothing short of miraculous. The smell of barbecue smoke mingles with children's laughter as neighbors who barely spoke before Brenda's downfall now gather around picnic tables sharing stories, recipes, and the kind of genuine community spirit that money can't buy but apparently tyranny can destroy. The legal resolution came swiftly once the evidence went public. Brenda pleaded guilty to reduced charges rather than face trial, paying full restitution of $47,000 plus penalties and legal fees that brought the total to just over $65,000. Her house sold within 30 days of her arrest, the for sale sign standing like a monument to the consequences of thinking rules don't apply to you. Frank dissolved Kensington Gardens LLC and took a job with a legitimate landscaping company 2 counties away, probably grateful to escape the shadow of his wife's spectacular fall from grace. Elena received a formal apology from the hospital administration for the harassment she endured, along with a commendation for maintaining professional excellence under extraordinary personal stress. Dr. Morrison nominated her for the State Nursing Association's Community Service Award, citing her grace under pressure and commitment to pediatric care despite facing what the nomination letter diplomatically called unprecedented personal attacks from a mentally unstable neighbor. The recovered HOA funds created opportunities none of us had imagined. The neighborhood voted to establish the Elena Martinez Nursing Scholarship for students pursuing pediatric nursing degrees, using $15,000 of the recovered money to help future caregivers follow Elena's path into healing professions. Another $20,000 went toward building a playground that rivals anything at the local parks, complete with equipment designed for children with disabilities. Elena's suggestion based on her experience with young patients recovering from serious injuries. Tom Martinez became our new HOA president by unanimous vote, running on a platform of radical transparency and zero tolerance for financial shenanigans. His first act was implementing monthly financial reports that every resident receives via email, along with photographs of completed work and receipts for all expenditures over $500. Trust but verify, Tom announced at his inaugural meeting, channeling his inner Ronald Reagan. And in Brenda's case, we forgot the trust part and went straight to verification. The broader impact extended far beyond our neighborhood borders. Sarah Chen's investigative series on HOA corruption won the State Journalism Association's Public Service Award, inspiring similar investigations across 3 counties that uncovered millions in fraudulent payments and self-dealing schemes. Her follow-up articles helped pass state legislation requiring annual independent audits for all HOA organizations managing more than $50,000 in community funds, a law now known informally as the Brenda Prevention Act. Our story became a template for other communities fighting similar battles. Attorney Martinez now specializes in HOA corruption cases, representing neighborhoods from suburban developments to retirement communities where board members thought they could steal with impunity. She keeps a framed copy of Tom's financial analysis on her office wall, calling it the most beautiful spreadsheet in legal history, and charging premium rates for what she calls the Kensington treatment. The personal healing took longer than the legal resolution, but watching Elena laugh with Mrs. Patterson while helping set up face-painting stations, I realize we've gained something more valuable than justice. We've built genuine community from the ashes of one woman's attempted tyranny. Elena's stress-related health issues disappeared completely once the harassment ended, her blood pressure returning to normal, and her natural joy in helping others fully restored. Property values in Willowbrook Commons increased by 12% over 6 months, not because of Brenda's oppressive rule enforcement, but because word spread about a neighborhood where residents actually support each other. Young families specifically seek us out, drawn by stories of a community that stands up to bullies and protects its most vulnerable members. Tonight, as children play on swings funded by recovered stolen money while their parents share grilled burgers and stories of Brenda's various ridiculous citations, Detective Walsh stops by in his civilian clothes. "Best arrest I ever made," he tells Elena, accepting a plate of her famous potato salad. "Usually we arrest people who hurt communities. That time, I got to arrest someone who was the community's biggest problem." The evening sun casts long shadows across our neighborhood as families pack up coolers and folding chairs, children tired from playground adventures funded by justice and parents planning next month's block party. Elena squeezes my hand as we watch neighbors helping each other carry supplies, the simple act of community cooperation feeling like the most natural thing in the world. "You know what the best part is?" Elena asks, her voice carrying the contentment of someone whose faith in human decency has been fully restored. "What's that?" Brenda was right about one thing, she says with a smile that could light up the darkness. Some people really do think rules don't apply to them. She just never realized she was describing herself. Walking inside past our rebuilt mailbox, I can't help but smile at the irony. Brenda spent years trying to make this neighborhood conform to her vision of order and control. Instead, she accidentally created something much better. A real community built on mutual respect, transparency, and the radical idea that everyone deserves to feel safe in their own home. So here's my question for you. What would you do if you faced an HOA Karen trying to drive you from your own home? Share your own neighborhood nightmare stories in the comments below. Some of you have tales that would make Brenda look like an amateur. And if you enjoyed watching justice triumph over petty tyranny, make sure to subscribe to HOA Stories for more tales of regular people fighting back against those who think power means never having to say you're sorry. Remember, bullies only win when good people stay silent. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be quiet.
We appreciate you spending your time with us on HOA Stories, where HOA Karens finally get checked. If you enjoyed today's drama, hit like, comment on your favorite part below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to catch our next HOA Showdown.